everybody, welcome to a Dharma Time episode. It's been a long time coming. It feels like we haven't done this in a while, but before we banter, let's go ahead and bring on the co-host. As always, this is Dharma Time, or Dope and Dharma Time segment. I am the Dharma Guy. He is the Dope Doctor. What is up? And together we are Dope and Dharma. What's going on, man?
I'm good, man.
Feels like I just saw you last night.
Delighted.
Yeah, it feels like I just saw you last night, man. Like we were just on a show last
Probably
night.
what Marissa's saying.
Right? And for those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, while we're not doing Dharma Time or Friday's edition of the Couch Live or Dope and Dharma, on Monday nights here locally, there's a radio station called 1680 AM. We go to that studio and we do the Couch Live there. And then last night we had a special 2-hour edition where we teamed up with the gentleman who did the show right before us. It was Rod Love and Greg Jackson. I do not remember what the name of their show is. I want to say it's Real Talk, but I'm probably wrong on that. Either way, it was a really, really good show last night, and I'm looking forward to seeing the feedback. I'm looking forward to kind of putting that video out there and see what people think. Marissa just said she votes for 5 days a week. Hey man, if we can find the time, I would totally be cool with that. There's plenty of content out there. But anyways, so today's Dharma Time, of course, this is our segment where we talk about spiritual stuff. We haven't done this for a few weeks just because scheduling and different things happening and whatnot.
Maybe we just haven't felt too spiritual, Trinity.
I feel spiritual every day, man. I just don't pontificate about it every day, though.
Oh, wait. Pontificate.
However, there was an interesting subject that I think that we could cover, and today might be a shorter show just because we have other things happening, and for some reason my internet is really wonky today, so we're hoping to get it, in and out. But anyways, no, the so the topic that I think we should discuss today, right? I refer to him as our own supervillain. You refer to him as an alien. To me, he's a supervillain. He's a typical like Lex Luthor. A lot of money, a lot of innovations, and doing things that are kind of on the edge of like, oh no. And that is Elon Musk, right? So Elon Musk, I call him a supervillain because he's got a ton of money. He's a billionaire. He's going into space. He's taking over our space program. He's inventing like these self-driving cars, and then the latest one is the Tesla bot. I think that's what we should talk about today. On a side note, real quick, Marissa said only 45 minutes of last night ended up on Facebook. I think the rest of it is coming. We had to do 2 different type of shows, so it was. I don't think they were used to that last night, so I think it was a learning process. So we'll get it up hopefully soon. Anyway, so the Tesla bot. So for those of you who are not aware, I'm not going to go into super detail because you can Google all the specs of what it's about. I'm going to give you the cliff notes of what it is. Basically, the same guy that I don't know how many years ago came out and had a philosophical debate where he warned us of a Terminator type situation with creating AI and the dangers within that. Fast forward a couple years, Mr. Supervillain decides to go ahead and come out with a Tesla bot, which is a humanoid AI robot that is shaped. I say humanoid, so it's like 5'9", 100 some pounds. It's supposed to look and feel like a human for the most part, not skin wise, but just 2 arms, 2 legs, a bipod, I guess. And the face is gonna be a screen with helpful information. It's supposed to be able to pick things up and put them down. It's supposed to be remedial tasks. And when he said remedial tasks, one of the things he mentioned was, hey, go to the store and buy this for me, or take this bolt and screw it into that. Those don't feel remedial to me. Those feel like a step up from like my Roomba, So it's a little interesting that Android companions seem to be quickly approaching us, but I feel it opens up an interesting philosophical or spiritual kind of debate, right? And that is, how do we treat them, right? Like, can you abuse a robot? Can you make a robot feel less than, assuming it has AI, and by AI I mean artificial intelligence? In other words, are we supposed to treat it like a sentient being, or and if we do, are we going to be laughed at? If we don't, are we going to be ridiculed? Like in today's woke nature, like I'm just curious as to how that's going to evolve, right? And for those of you who maybe are trying to grasp what I'm talking about, once again, I think that there's robots, what we have now, like I said, like a Roomba, where it's like an automated thing that kind of goes around your house and vacuums up or whatever. And then there's like what I remember from my age group, Data. Data from Star Trek, where he was like a walking, talking person, but he was actually an android. But he appeared, visually as a human being. He spoke, and could carry on. He had charisma, if you will. So if they present that way, right? If they're able to respond to you and talk to you and do things for you, how do we treat them? Is that, do we treat them like a sentient being, even though they're, I guess, technically not? So as we get started, what are your immediate thoughts, man?
I want to go on the record as letting them know I am your friend. I'm okay. I love you.
Yeah.
I care about you. I support you 100%.
Bro, he purposely made them only move at 5 miles an hour just in case we needed to run from them. Think about
Trinity
that.
says, I can't run. 5 miles an hour may be faster than I can walk at this point. So I am your friend, Mr. Robot.
Yeah.
I am not your enemy. Now, Trinity, on the other hand, may have different opinions. That's him.
Yeah.
Not me.
Well, my mom says Japan has a health robot for people living alone that keeps track of their health stats.
I need one of those.
And then Richard says, what the heck are we talking about today? So if you missed the intro, Richard, what we're talking about today is from a spiritual perspective or a philosophical perspective. There's a Tesla bot kind of in the works at the moment that should be here in the next year or two. And essentially Elon Musk is trying to make the movies come to real life, essentially, man, where we have like Danger Will Robinson, where we have actual robots like as companions who do our house chores and tasks and run errands for us and things of that nature. And so the question here is, if it reaches that kind of level where you can actually converse with it back and forth and it can do things for you, how do we treat it? Do we treat it as a sentient being or do we treat it as an object? Does it have feelings even though technically it doesn't? Like, how do we philosophically how do we move forward through that? Because not to get too out of the realm of reality here, even though our supervillain did say this, they could turn on us, right? So let me say, do we want to make friends with them? Like, do we approach it in a situation where you're a robot, you don't have feelings, I'm gonna do whatever I want, but then when they finally decided to rebel, you're top on the list? Like, I know it sounds kind of funny, but in reality, it's coming, right? Like, we've all seen the movies, we've seen Terminators and things of that nature. We see Elon Musk rolling out robots, and as my mother just commented on here, Japan's already got like health robots. So AI is getting better and better as the years progress. Why they're obsessed with creating AI, even though we know it could go wrong, I don't know. That seems like how every horrible sci-fi movie started. But they keep trying to invent a smarter, more capable AI. They're trying to build human, for lack of a better purpose. What do we do with that? Like, how do we, how do we treat them?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not a fan of Siri. I think she's annoying. She hates me. I hate her. We have this.
That's just because your accent, right?
Yeah, I don't even talk to her anymore because she never understands me. She understands Dana perfectly, little racist little Siri. But she doesn't get me at all, so I just ignore her completely. Then this Echo Dot, or whatever, she's always at my daughter's house listening. That's freaky, So I don't know how I feel about those things, but if this one can walk and chase me down, I am your friend.
Right.
And here's the age thing. The weird thing is that you threw out age there. You said, well, because of your age group, you think of what would you call it? Data.
Data from Star Trek.
Yeah. So, and the weird thing is when you brought it up, yeah, I thought Terminator, but you know what else I thought?
What's that?
Pinocchio.
I want to be a real life boy.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
now, Pinocchio's not a machine, but he wanted to be treated like a real life boy, so that's what I thought about.
Well, Richard said here, have we really become a culture so incapable of being compassionate and compromised that we no longer have the ability to make our own friends and develop relationships? I don't think that was the purpose of this. I don't think that the purpose, from what my understanding is, I think it's a more utility purpose, right? Like, I don't think they're trying to make friends. I think they're trying to make something that can do the remedial tasks. Like, for instance, I'm not going to lie, man, if I had a robot that could go out there and mow my lawn for me, which we have seen, by the way, Daytona 500, we saw him out there, like solar powered like GPS little like robot lawnmowers that were out there mowing the lawns. If I had a an AI here at the house that was like cost effective, that I could essentially say, hey, it's Tuesday, do me a favor, go out there and mow the lawn for me. That would be pretty tempting to have. It would make life really convenient, you know. I mean, we already have it. Think of as you mentioned, Siri, our phones. We already essentially have an AI companion. The only thing the phone can't do physically is to pick up and do things for us. And so we already rely on technology so much now. There's refrigerators that you could just order, new milk from your refrigerator right there. There's so many things that we have as far as a convenience these days. And yes, I agree that's a different debate as far as are we becoming too lazy as a society? Who knows? But I think the technology, the intent of the technology, is the same as the intent of the technology that's been placed in the working field at the moment, right? Like, I know before I left the Postal Service, however many years ago, they were having machines come in and doing the sorting and things of that nature. It was faster, it was more efficient, it didn't get sick, it didn't call in. So from a business perspective, it's more cost effective and better to have a non-human employee in many cases. And we're seeing it when we go to like Walmarts and things of that nature. They have the self checkouts and stuff where they don't need a checkout person anymore. I know certain fast food restaurants are having it as well. Like I think I've seen McDonald's where you could just literally walk up, type in your order, and go pick it up. There's no need for a human at all. And so once again, I think we could even debate that on a different show as to philosophically or spiritually, what does that mean for society? But I think the what I'm focused on today, though, is assuming these things become real, like tangible, and I don't mean just super rich can afford them. I mean, because eventually it'll start out that way, but eventually it'll turn out to be we all would have our own little robot in the house, um, and that robot, assuming it's got AI that can talk back and forth to you, and you ask it to go do things. I do see a debate coming as to how do we treat them, like. I could see them. I could see them taking that route, and I think that's an interesting discussion.
But if you watch those movies, that's the problem. When you treat them poorly, is where the problems begin. Treat them well. You treat them like you should treat a human. That's the idea.
Wouldn't they just be our slaves at that point? Then, if we look
no,
at
no,
them
no,
as a
no, no.
sentient being, they're our slave.
We'll take the word S out of there. Take the S word out of there. No slave. You're not a slave. No.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem. If you treat anyone or anything like that, you've got to expect, that they're going to eventually want to rise up and come against you. So, no, why would we go into this knowing that these movies exist of these disaster movies where they take over? Knowing that exists, why would you go into this going, I'm going to treat you poorly just to see if that's true? No, I am your friend from the beginning. Go back and rewind the tape. I'm glad this is recorded. I can go back and tell my AI, hey, back in August 24th of 21, go review the Dharma Time episode from that day, and you'll see, from even before you existed, I cared about you. It has nothing to do with you tying me up on my pinky toe here in the house upside down. I loved you back then.
That's okay. Siri has already notated this in the Mega Hive. So
Siri's a bitch, and she knows it. I forget Siri.
Well, you're going to pay for that.
No. My AI is going to know that Siri's a totally different animal. Siri's different.
And so Richard said, personally, I believe we need to roll technology back to the early days of the computer because, no, I don't believe we are becoming too lazy of a society. I believe we are already there. I got to be honest, man. I don't want to go back to the early. I do not want to go back to like dial-up days where like computers are super slow and you couldn't get anything done. I love the fact that, dude, in my pocket, I've got access to all the information essentially that I could ever want. I can Google anything that I want to. I can order food. I can order a ride. I can order, merchandise. I can stream and talk to millions of people at the same time. I do not want to go back to the days where we're like, rotary phones and stuff like that. No, I'm good.
And Trinity, there's already people having sex with real life dolls, so these already exist. I mean, so it's not like people don't have relationships with inanimate objects now. So can you imagine if it's talking to you?
Dude, there's people in Japan who get married. There's people in Japan who are marrying their dolls, man, and they do talk back. Not quite as to the level of what we're talking about here, but they do.
Let them. I'm okay with that. You can marry whatever you like. You want to marry a Volkswagen Beetle?
There's somebody who's done that too.
I don't care. Yeah, I don't care.
But philosophically, I think it's an interesting thing, man, because like I said, I think the if it can think, right? If it can generate responses to what you're saying, other than just the standard list, right? I do believe that would introduce a different element that we don't currently have. You know, Siri can only respond to certain things. The Roomba in your house doesn't respond at all. So to have something with that can present emotions, like Data used to present in the movie or in the shows, to have something that can actually converse back to you and formulate what appears to be on face value an opinion on something, that I think that would make it interesting. I think that would make it difficult to not look at that as like as like you said, like or like I said, a slave of some sort, like
Yeah.
doing my bidding. Like it would make it difficult, I think, to do that, and it seems like that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I'd want the I'd like to program it to want to be a slave. So it's me saying, no, I don't want you to be. No, I want to be your slave. No, you have freedom. You have the right to
Yeah,
choose. You know what I mean? But it'll be programmable. I mean, I think, look, for the sake of Dharma Time, I get what you're saying. Philosophically, you know, how do we take, us that we're not even treating humans great, but at least they can gather together and express their feelings, and then therefore we can hopefully change our minds on how we treat them, compared to things that we've created. And I gotta say, I think that we would treat I think we would treat things that we created better than another human being. I mean, you hear it all the time. People say, I love dogs. I hate people. Um, People that consider themselves very loving people, very humanitarian type people. They love animals more than they love people.
yeah,
So I don't think it'd be different. I think people are going to like their AI better.
yeah. And there's even been that's been in movies as well, where you have like people fighting for the rights of the non sentient beings, essentially, and it does bring up an interesting debate. Having said that, I'm going to roll with what Richard said. It might take us a little off topic, but hey, we run this, so we can do what we want.
Yep.
He said, "You are comfortable with all the technology in your pocket. Are you as comfortable with all the power, control, surveillance, manipulations that may come with it?" Obviously, I am.
Yes.
If I wasn't, I wouldn't be participating. I'm not. Uh, so, in theory, I had a problem when the Patriot Act happened, right? When 9/11 happened, they took that as an opportunity to pass the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act was the very beginning of chipping away at our personal liberties and things. Having said that, and I know this goes contrary to what many fought for and things of that nature. Um, I don't have I don't have anything to hide. So it doesn't bother me that Amazon looks at every single thing that I buy, and then in the coming days or weeks will offer up suggestions of what I might want to buy next and stuff. No, it doesn't bother me because they've been doing that for years. They're just more efficient. Coke and Pepsi and all these other they've been doing it for years. We had so it was probably a couple months ago now. We had this a thing through the Orange County. Him and I are both on the Orange County Drug Free Coalition, right? And so we went through them to get we were trying to come up with a new campaign, and in that campaign, one of the demographics that we were looking for is for Gen Z and how to talk to them and market them and things of that nature. And so we got a marketing company to kind of do an assessment, if you will, and give us some ideas on how to market. Um, I have Gen Z in my home, and you did as well. And when they came out with what their data said, they were so on point. It wasn't even. It was ridiculous on how Venn diagram we really are as people. Right? We've always known that when it comes to personalities. There's only what 7 personalities or something like that. We all think that we're unique little snowflakes, and stuff, but we're not. We're all pretty much kind of similar. And so they've been marketing to us and they've been playing us and watching what we do and looking at our spending habits for centuries. Every company, I mean, back when the whole century of the self thing happened with Edward Barnett, um, the cigarette companies knew how many females were buying their cigarettes. Like they were already tracking that kind of stuff. And then they already manipulated all of them by having him come out and do what he did, and cigarette sales amongst women skyrocketed. And so they've been doing manipulation and surveillance for years. They're just more efficient at it. But do I have you got to remember, man, we're in our 40s now. Like I'm now, maybe if I was 18 coming up, I might have a bit of a problem with it. Maybe I don't know, but it's only making my life easier at this point. I'm less likely to get involved in things at this point in my life that I don't want anybody knowing about. So it doesn't bother me that they're surveilling the way they are. And if you don't like it, you always have the option to not participate. You don't have to have social media. You don't have to have a smartphone. There's people who do live off the grid who don't have any
Kind
of those things.
of,
You know
kind of do.
what?
To participate in this world, you do.
It depends on what level you want to participate at. There
Yeah.
are people who live off grid, who live out there and make their own things, and
They're
more
not
power to them.
participating. Yeah, but they're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
participating in the world. I mean, to
Well,
participate in the world, I mean,
there's different levels, right? There's full participation where you're fully ingrained, and there's just a little bit because as long as you're walking, living, and breathing, you're somewhat participating. But the level of participation you're doing is different than mine,
you're
and,
sucking at my at that point.
we always have the option. And so I think, yeah, it's a contract we've all signed, man. Whether we want, whether we realize it or not.
I already treat this world like it's Westworld, so it doesn't change me. I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? To me, you're an AI. You're just a really good one. And I could pick up the phone and then like you wake up from your AI sleep whenever I call you. Uh, or I don't know why I must think about you, and then all of a sudden you wake up and call me, and then I didn't know I thought about you, but you called me and asked me a question. That's just the way this world is. It's already Westworld, So to me, I think it's really cool. It just makes it to me a little bit more programmable, a little bit more interesting. At least in the first couple generations. Now in the later generations, if they come back and attack us and kill us, I'd be long gone by then. So I really don't care. It's
Yeah.
not going to get that advanced by the time I'm out of here.
Well, and so Richard asked another question. He said, first off, we are way beyond the Patriot Act, for crying out loud. NSA spying on journalists. If you don't think they were always spying on journalists and things of that nature, I got bad news for you. But the last one he just said was interesting. He says, humor me for a second. What if the information that is being collected would be used for a social justice or acceptance score that would determine whether or not you can fully function in society if you
Yeah.
don't meet the standards? They already have that, actually. They've rolled that out in China. China is doing a social, I don't remember what it's called, but it's a social point system that they have. And if you because they have so many cameras everywhere and they have a ranking system. And if you are seen or caught doing something that does not fall within that ranking system, then you're deducted points. And if you don't have enough points, you can't participate in the public transit system. You can't, yeah, they already have it in China. And all the other governments are already talking to them and trying to get what they're doing. And they have all this very, very highly advanced facial recognition software and tracking software that the rest of the world is definitely interested in. So, Richard, to answer your question, it's already happening in those countries. I don't know if that would happen here because we do have a constitution and we have many people like yourself that would stand up and fight against it. We do have a little bit more power than the individuals in China have. Um, but the idea that we fight AI, so, like, I think we're at this weird crossroads, right? And that is, you can agree or disagree on if it should, but you have to accept the fact that it is. So now you got to decide, how am I going to respond to it? Like the argument that we shouldn't or that we should go back, that's not going to happen. That ship has already sailed. You've already lost that fight. So technology is going to continue to progress. We're going to have AI. We're going to have more surveillance. We're going to have all these things. So now it's up to us to how to respond to it, right? Like we can either respond to it by still sitting back in our rocking chairs, thinking how things should have been, and everything's going to pass us by, and we'll have no decision making power. Or we can choose to be involved in it, accept the fact that it's coming, but help moderate the way in which it comes and how it affects us. I think that's the winning scenario. This idea that it should go back to where it was, you're going to be left behind, man. That's just how it's going to happen because it's coming. Much in the same way, for instance, to a lesser extent, the weed debate, right? There was many, many individuals who were, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who all thought that, reefer madness and weed should always be illegal. It's the worst thing on the planet. How's that working for them? Weed's pretty much legal almost everywhere at this point, and as time progresses, it's going to be legal everywhere. So those individuals who fought the idea or the notion of it ever being legal in any way, they've completely lost the battle, and they're not even allowed to even speak anymore on the subject. They're considered dinosaurs and aren't even allowed in their input. But those people who were actually understood that it was coming and positioned themselves to have some sort of authority are actually the ones that are making the laws for it and deciding where it gets legal, what the parameters are, and things of that nature. And I think technology is very much the same. What are your thoughts, Louis?
I I'm just blown away by the thought of it though, because I mean you're right. I think it is coming. Um, I don't think that a lot of people are thinking the way that you are in regards to how are we going to treat them. Because I think initially, unfortunately, I think people treat things poorly.
Sure.
Like I thought, like when Siri first came out, people did curse her out. Like I don't curse her out.
Right.
I just don't talk to her, But there are people that would say things,
Sure.
just to get her to say it or whatever. So I think at first the novelty is going to be, do this for me, or do that, or say that, or what I mean.
Sure.
But hopefully, eventually, as you build a relationship, and unfortunately, we all do, we build a relationship with our vehicles. We build a relationship with inanimate objects all the time.
Yeah.
I have a favorite chair. I'm sure you have a favorite chair, like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That you sit in your house, and so you have a relationship with it to some degree. You know what I mean. And so I just think it'll be on steroids if I can say, hey, can you go get me a Celsius
Right.
from the downstairs refrigerator, and this robot walks downstairs, gets me a Celsius, and brings it back up. Oh my God!
That's the plan.
I mean,
That's what he talked about.
I'm in love with that. I will literally go take the ring off my wife's finger and put it on that freaking robot. I seriously will. I mean, that's awesome. How can you not love that? I mean,
Yeah.
what I would fight for at that point in time is we should be able to marry a human and a robot together. I should be able to have two marriages, one with a robot and one with my wife.
I know we were trying to stay on topic as far as philosophically how do we treat it, but it seems like the chat is blowing up in a different direction, which I'm okay with. Like, let's just run with it. So, the next thing Richard said was, so you believe that loss of individual freedom and privacy is acceptable? Once again, to an extent.
Right. I agree with you. We already gave up our privacy a long time ago, and I agree with you. Although you said we're in our 40s, I'm 51. I have a lot less to hide. So I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, we lost a lot of that stuff. Anyways, Big Brother's been watching us for a long time. This idea that he isn't, that's a pipe dream. Do I think it's acceptable? Obviously, I do because I'm living in it, right? I bought the new iPhone. I'm gonna, my car has a computer in it now. It's not a corporation anymore.
Listening all the time.
We've all adapted it slowly but surely. Once again, we could argue if that's been beneficial or not. I think it's been both, right? Like I think that technology has been both a blessing and a curse for many people. It's been a blessing because look how convenient our lives have gotten. Look how more connected we are to everybody in the world. Look how much more aware we are of so many things. Look at how many people have a voice that previously didn't. Look at how many people are now aware of options that they weren't before. So I think it's been amazing, the technology and the advances that we've made. And don't forget, fire is technology. The wheel, tools, that's all technology. Before when we were just cavemen out there with no tools, no technology, we were dying left and right. But we started to learn more technology that made our lives better and more efficient and more convenient to where eventually we are where we are. But there is a downside, right? Early on, the technology, the downside of us learning how to fire, or, make fire and tools, the downside was we started tearing things down to create better and more long-lasting settlements and buildings. It was no longer a grass hut. We started building construction and stuff. And so the detriment there was the world itself we were depleting some of its resources and taking up space. As far as us as people, we are more connected than we've ever been, but we're also more lonely and depressed than we've ever been. So obviously there's a disconnect somewhere in there between, hey, I'm looking on FaceTime and actual human interaction. So, there's always a cost to everything. So am I okay if we lost total privacy and freedom? No, of course I'm not. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't. But do I think that every single freedom that we have is worth fighting for? That's debatable. I think that we've already lost some of them. But when you look at how good our lives have gotten, it was obviously worth it. The Marissa followed. There's a lot of comments. I'm gonna try to keep up with them real quick.
I was gonna say the perspective is also from the point of having complete freedom, right? Or the perception of complete freedom. Look, to our kids, the level of freedom that they have right now, their perspective comes from that. They don't know what it was like anywhere differently. So that's only a debate if you're gonna go into the future and try to exist in that future.
Right.
But it happens at the same rate that you're able to adapt. So the generation that has it like that, they're not going to know any difference. So to them, it's all relative.
And to that, you can make the argument of the frog in the frying pan. Like, I know where he's getting at. I understand that. But at the same token, as you said, I'm in the back nine right now, man. Like, they're not going to make as much advances by the time I'm out of my element here, to where I have to really worry about that.
Exactly.
Marissa said, I keep trying to tell people who want to pray all this away or believe what I call the hopium, that the only way things can change is by prayer and action, not necessarily violent. Leave me alone, Zuckerberg. And then she followed that up with, I won't enable Siri or whoever it is on the TV. I'm well aware that button is already enabled by the company and she'll hear me anyways, but I feel better when she doesn't talk.
Yes.
And then says, I mean, the way gender and sexuality is evolving, that's possible. And then Richard says, I'm not a fan of the mentality, but I digress. Are we now a more loving, more functional, more productive society as individuals? Has the technology made us better people? Connected doesn't equal better. And he says, you don't think that will happen? Post something on Facebook about how Donald Trump is a great president and the COVID vaccine should be an individual choice. Let me know how that works for you. Yeah, once again, though, we can't compare a private company to our Constitution, right? That's the debate of whether they are a platform or a publisher. And that debate has still been going. So if they are a platform, then obviously things change. If they're a publisher, things change. And that is the whatever, I don't remember what it's called right now. I think it's like the Act 230 or something like that, whatever it is. And so that's still being debated, and it hasn't been settled yet. And so until that's settled, they're a private company. They can kind of do what they want until we decide otherwise. Have we become more loving and everything else? I think some people have. I think if you are once again, it's perspective, right? If you were an old, toxic, uber, misogynistic individual, no, we haven't. But if you are a 13-year-old gay kid right now, yeah, we feel much more loving than we ever used to, right? Like, I remember when I was a kid, we had a Matthew Shepard incident where the kid was, I think it was in Wyoming, where he was beaten up and killed and stuff simply for being gay. And so, yeah, I think in that perspective, I think we are much more loving than we've ever been. But as individuals, yes. As a mob, no, I don't think we are. But that's kind of happened forever, right? I mean, that's if you go all the way back to the Pitchfork days. Individuals are pretty reasonable, nice, loving, compassionate people. Groups of people, not so much. And they've always been that way. I mean, you go back to tribalistic days and wars and things of that nature, mobs of people don't typically end well for the others, whoever the others might be. And so I think it's easy for us to look where we're at right now. Like, for instance, this whole, we want to go back in the back times. We have this bad habit of romanticizing things, right? Or we have two things. We either A, look at the right now as if this is the best ever or the only ever, and we forget history. Or we romanticize history and make it better than it really was. People said that I want to go back in such and such times. Well, because there was a time where you died at like 30 because you had a cold. Like, we forget those things. Like, we live longer. We have much more access to medicines and technology and things that make our life better. I think the idea of creating compassionate individuals lies within us in our own communities. We were kind of talking about this last night on the show to a lesser extent, but the same concept, and that is, it's on us, right? It's on me to teach my children to be loving and compassionate. It's not up to the government. It's not up to my neighbors. It's up to me. And so if my family isn't more compassionate or more loving, that's on me, and I got to right the ship. Go ahead.
When the world was doing fantastic during the Spanish Inquisition, I think it was awesome. I just got to say that for my family, we rocked it out. we could go anywhere. Nobody would stop our ships from going anywhere. Everywhere we walked, you just all right, you better. You know what I mean? Everybody was wearing our jerseys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Look, Billy the Kid was a 15-year-old with a gun. So, I remember using that as an analogy when people would say, how is it that you were involved in a school shooting back in the 80s? Kids didn't have guns back then. I said, I had a gun back then. I left high school because of a school shooting. I was a kid with a gun in the 80s. Billy the Kid was a 15-year-old kid with a gun. We always had it. We just didn't know about it, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I'm sure, by the way, I don't have proof of this, but I'm guessing there was even road rage with stagecoaches back in the day. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
there was a stagecoach dude getting real pissed at the guy that was going really slow on his donkey in front of him, going, "Dude, seriously,
Right.
you can just go up the gravel a little bit. Let me get my stagecoach through. You with your little burro are in my way." You know, I guarantee somebody, and he probably shot him.
Well, dude,
He
actually,
probably-
the oldest living fossil, or the oldest fossil ever found, right? I think it was the Iceman. Well, I think recently they found one even older than that, but the oldest up to that point was the Iceman. It was a frozen, carcass essentially of a human that they found underneath the ice and stuff. When they pulled it out and they did like a quote unquote autopsy to look at it, it had an arrow in its back. So the oldest the oldest thing that we found
it was probably a road rage incident.
Yeah, like we are a warring species. This idea that we're so civilized, it wasn't that long ago, and I know you get mad at me every time, but it wasn't that long ago we were chucking spears at each other. Like it wasn't that long ago.
You can't say those two words.
I'm
just telling you, I don't care if it's reality or not. Those two words have a totally different meaning when they come out of your mouth. Don't do that.
And then, all right, so he says, I think you're cross-contaminating different subject matter, but Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Amazon, Nike, and Apple are today's mob. They are all privately owned companies. Is it okay if they are the ones that manage the information technology, social scores, and quality of life? No,
I see what he's saying. I see what he's saying. Both things are true.
Well. Yeah, I get what you're saying as well. And if you've watched our show, we've come out against a lot of the censorship and things of that nature. Having said that, we the people give them the power. We keep using and buying their products. So,
right here.
Exactly.
We're on Facebook right now. What are you talking about? I can't say, Zuckerberg, you can kiss my patootie booty. Yet, thank you very much for Facebook, by the way. So, I mean, look, man, we're hypocritical all the way around. That's the human existence, right?
Yeah.
You don't like, that things are moving in a positive direction. But tell me this, because I know that you must love it the way I do, Trinity. We have so many cool inventions, right? We have so many things. Two things that I really love in the most recent decade. One, toilets that flush all by themselves. I don't want to touch the damn thing if I have to use someone else's toilet out in public.
Right.
I don't want to touch it. I'll use my feet. And look, I may still be able to get my foot really high up and flush it high up, but there's going to come a day where I can't reach that toilet flusher. So self-flushing toilets are cool. Also, self-opening doors or already open doorways to go into the bathroom. Please, I still don't understand why I have to use my hand to open the door.
Well, they got the
Nobody likes it.
Too.
Yeah, they have that little foot thing now.
Yeah.
But if you have flip-flops, that thing is now no bueno, man. that thing hurts. So my point is that there's little things like that you're like, oh man, this invention is nice. So technology has its positives and it has its negatives. I like to focus on the positives, but I also appreciate the people out there like Mr. Coleman that focus on that other stuff, because that protects us from the stuff that we are blind to or ignore. And you need that. You need those people that are, wait, this might be a little bit too far. Hey, we need to ease up on this a little bit. So I do appreciate that we have a segment of our society that's always questioning authority, monitoring authority, and not letting them get too out of hand too quick. So I do want to say that.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. I think what I'm pushing for now, I try to be the realist, right? Like, I don't like it when we romanticize the past as if it was that great.
Oh, that I don't like.
I don't, like friends, and you said I was cross-contaminating. No, Richard, because you asked earlier if we're becoming more compassionate as a species, and then you switched it to, technology and the people running things. So no, as far as compassion as a species, I think we've always struggled with that. As far as technologies, I agree with you. But at the end of the day, the companies that you mentioned, they're private companies. At the end of the day, they are, and that is our system. As a private company, you can kind of do what you want to do. Do I think they should have blocked Trump the way they did? Do I think they should have censorship the way they do? No, I don't. But I'm not a managing member of their board that can dictate what they can and can't do. Right. Now, if they come up with, and Marissa put it up earlier, Section 230, I think that's why Section 230 is important. And I think more people should be involved in what that is and how it's approached. And for those of you who don't know, that's what I was talking about earlier. Section 230 is a part of what Senate and Congress, whatever, has debated, and they're trying to decide if things like Facebook are a platform or if they are a publisher. If they are a platform, then they should not be allowed to kick anybody off, and it becomes more of a public utility, and we all have a fair right to kind of say what we want and do what we want. If it's a platform, or excuse me, if it's if they're a publisher, then they can decide what gets seen on their thing, and they can ban certain people. However, that then also makes them liable for whatever is put out there. They do not want to be a publisher because they don't want to be liable, but they're resistant to becoming a platform because then they would lose control as to what they could or couldn't allow, and that's the debate that's happening. And I think that's an important debate, and that's why I'm glad for people like Richard who are going to continue to, ring the alarms of like, hey, there's a problem here, because I agree 100%.
It's like it had me laughing because we keep saying it that politicians have always been liars, right? And this is the first generation where they're trying to teach our kids that Donald Trump was the first lying politician. No, politicians have always been that was always the running joke, that politicians lied, right? And then now when you hear things about Facebook or social media, and says, well, we gotta watch out for people being lied to. So if you're not telling the truth, or if it's not valid, I'm thinking, wait a minute, what didn't we always say if you found it on the internet it's probably a lie? Aren't there like a lot of people, there's guys that are my age that are pretending to be something they're not on the internet somewhere? I'm sure that they're probably even playing a 13-year-old female and some what I'm saying, like those little things that has always existed. So the fact that it's like, oh my God, we got to protect people from the lies on the internet. Dude, if you did that, everybody has to be removed. Well, I'm pretty sure someone over there that swiped left or right, whichever way it was, probably wanted to call them in and says, listen, the person I swiped left or right on, that I met the person. That didn't look anything like that picture. That
yeah, well,
false advertising.
All right, so the last comment Richard just said, I'm going to pull a Ludi from last night with our producer. He said, I believe that technology has emboldened people to be bigger jerks because there isn't a face-to-face interaction that creates accountability. I believe it's made us worse. I understand where you're coming from. And yes, I believe that there's some value to the way we grew up, where we actually had to fear a butt whooping from somebody, so it moderated our speech. However, I'm calling BS that once again that this is a new phenomenon here. I just think, and Louis alluded to this earlier, I think we're just more aware of it, right? Because if you don't think that people Rome fell because people backstabbed and did horrible things to each other. Vlad the Impaler had an entire country where he put people on spikes to make them afraid to come. We've been brutal as a species and horrible to each other for as long as I can remember. I mean, even if you go back into biblical days, didn't Cain kill Abel? I mean, so we are a violent species. So the idea that we've gotten worse, I don't agree with that. I think we're just more aware of it. Like, I think that the things that we're seeing now have always happened. And Richard, you and I went to the same school. We saw fights in our school. I remember one fight where I don't remember the kid's name, but he got hit in the head with somebody had a lock and they hit him in the head. When he fell and he hit his head on the parking thing, and it messed him up for life. Like, we've had that. They've always been around. Do I think it's worse? No. Matter of fact, I think as a species we're better. I think we're less. I think in the olden days, to go all the way through adolescent years into high school, into adulthood without getting into a fist fight, I think it was virtually impossible. In today's world, I think it is possible to not get into a fist fight. There's plenty of adults that have just never been into a fist fight in their entire lives. So I think that we do actually treat each other physically better than we used to, because to be honest with you, I think we're more accountable now in certain aspects. Meaning, back in the day, you know how much stuff I did in my life that my life would have been a lot different if everybody had a phone where they could record it and post it on social media. There are so many things in my life I would never have done had I thought that, oh gosh, this is going to be on social media. And so I think there is a level of accountability. We just have to adjust to it. But I don't like this romantic idea that back in the day we were so kind and nice to each other. No, man. The Holocaust happened in the past. There's 1 million people. No, I don't think we're better. Some of his responses here. Marissa said, I think it's slowly happened and we are starting to feel the effects now. Richard says, I always feared you. I'm not even going to read that one.
I'll read it.
Mark
says,
Thornton,
I always feared a whipping from you. I just never learned to check my words.
He said we need more fist fights, more gloveless bullets. Um, yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for that. There is. But I can't buy into this idea that we're worse off now. I know it feels good to say. It feels good to look at all these people we don't agree with, all these young kids making stupid decisions. But I think every generation has done that. Like, I think my mom looked at me and says, "You're making stupid decisions. Where's this country going?" And I think that her parents looked at her that way. I mean, they looked at Elvis and he was shaking his hips and stuff. I think we all look at the next generation thinking that it's gotten worse. But when you look around, realistically speaking, it's gotten better in many ways. I mean, do I think that my mom said absolutely? So yes, thank you for that. Um, like I said, I think it's a knee jerk reaction and it feels good to sit back and say things are getting worse. But I think if we really objectively look at it, I think things have gotten better, man. I mean, in every facet of life, dude. Like if you look at disease, we don't die from colds anymore. That we've gotten rid of polio. You know, like broken bones and stuff like that. They said it. I mean, just if you're a football fan, right? There was a time where a broken leg, you were done. That was it. That was your career. Now they have the technology where they put these cast on it on the field, and then you're back playing in a few months. Car accidents. We used to have these tanks on wheels, man, that destroyed everything in sight. Now we have where they crumple, and we have airbags and seatbelts, and so many people are more safe with that. We do have FDA. Granted, FDA is not perfect, but they control on the stuff that's in our foods and the things that we eat. Like there's so many improvements we made, but I think people spend a lot of time overlooking those just to point out the bad. His next comment, he said, I believe the only thing that has increased is the stupidity and ignorance in our society. So even then, I think everybody's thought that. Like, I think my mom looked at me when I was younger and some of the stuff that I said and did. I'm like, you stupid. Louis always joking. His dad used to look at him like, stupid idiot. Like, and I'm,
stupid idiot.
Yeah. So I think that every generation, it's ingrained in us to look at the next generation because there's advancements and it's different. And we're used to our way. And when we see different, our immediate thought is stupid. And some of it probably is. But some of it is way better. Like the iPhone. This wasn't our old generations. Or this was the newer generations. These were the younger people who designed these things. This wasn't some 90-year-old dude in there like, I'm going to make a thing where I could, put it on my phone and carry the internet. Like, these were the younger generations, the innovators that said, hey, you know what? I can, and those people said that they were stupid. You're stupid for even thinking of it. And now look, we got it. So, yeah, I think some of it is stupid. I look at my kids and I think of some of the stuff that they do, like they are retarded sometimes. However, they follow that up almost immediately with something I'm thinking, wow, dude, I never even thought of that. And I think that's the yin and yang of it. What do you think?
No, I agree with you, man. I mean, I also, I'm like you. I do not romanticize the past because the past was nowhere better. There's very few things. I think the only thing better was we were more ignorant then to what was really happening. So you were able to shut yourself out from the some of the evils or the problems of the world easier. I think it's harder now to shut yourself out from it because everywhere there's some sort of news clipping or someone's going to bring it up to you, right? So I think it's harder to hide away from the pains that exist out there. But as far as people, look, man, I hope that we are as compassionate to the created beings that we create, these bots that Elon Musk creates. I hope we are more compassionate to those than we are to him, because he is an individual that a lot of people hate on. Some because he's rich, some because he's goofy, some because he's odd, some, I mean, the guy's autistic, right? He's autistic. He has Asperger's or something. And look what he's done with it. I didn't know that. Yeah, and look what he's done.
Changed the world.
I mean, this guy actually has something that other people like do 5Ks for if it was someone else. But because it's Elon Musk and he's rich, you don't have that same level of compassion or love for him. You don't realize, a lot of people do not realize what he's been able to do with this awkwardness that he has walked around with. And instead of being angry and hateful to all of society, maybe he is. Maybe that's why he is a supervillain in creating this. Mm-hmm. But he's gone out and created some really magnificent things and some incredible jobs, and it's expanded the minds of a lot of individuals. There's a lot of little kids that I've met in my life, like little ones, that admired him. And it's like you knew that if they admired him, they must like future little scientists. You know what I mean? Just like in our generation, kids looked up to like George Lucas, the guys that made the movies of Star Wars. Well, kids today are able to look at him, Elon Musk, and he is their George Lucas. He's actually done it for real. And so they're like, wow, Elon Musk. You know what I mean? I think that's really cool.
No, I agree. And Richard said, I'm sorry, I retract my previous statement. I believe you should be more specific about what technology we are talking about. Medical versus social media technology are two. I don't think they are, man. I think technology as a whole, you can't have one without the other. And even still, I can make a case that social media has changed the world for the better. In many instances, do I think it's changed it for the worse? Of course. But it's changed it for the better, too. I mean, there was a whole group of people, was it Boko Haram, I think it was, in Darfur. All these things, these atrocities and genocides that were taking place in these other countries that
right now
we never knew about, and we wouldn't have known about had it not been for them having a voice with social media that can actually get the word out and say, look, this is what's happening right now in Afghanistan. There's a lot of stuff happening.
And Havana.
I don't know anything about Havana yet, but my point is, both. I think social media, a couple things it has done, right? Think about as you said, with Asperger's or whatever, think about the awkward kid who goes to school that nobody likes. We all know that kid that just sits alone, nobody likes, just cannot seem to find their niche in this world. And they feel alone and nobody likes them. And no matter what happens, their parents can't help them because they don't talk to them, right? That same person can now go home, join social media, and find other kids who feel exactly the way they do. Maybe back in my day, they were the Dungeons and Dragons kids, right? The Dungeons and Dragons kids, we all made fun of them, and they would all meet up in somebody's garage and play Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. Well, now they don't have to do that. Now they can go on the internet and they can find a whole group on Facebook of millions of people who all love Dungeons and Dragons, and they can convert, and they have that sense of connection, that sense of community of like, you know what, I belong. And that wouldn't happen without social media. There's people who are family members who don't live here get to see my children and do things. Right now, people are listening to us, and who knows? Hopefully, we're making an impact on somebody. That's all because of social media. I've had people communicate to me from different countries and different states that have gotten value from our show. We have a lady listens here all the time from England. And she's constantly commenting on things and messaging us. She would never see what we're doing without social media. So I can make the case that social media has been a great revolution for the world and has made amazing positive impacts. However, with that positive impact also comes negative impacts. Much like a car. I think we all agree that a car is amazing, right? It gets us across the country in less than 3 weeks, right? It can get us across the country in a couple days. It helps us carry many different people, keeps us safe from the elements and all these other things, but it came at a cost. If you got hit with a horse and buggy, you probably lived. If you get hit by a semi or an 18-wheeler, you're probably not going to live through that. So our accidents are much more frequent because we're at higher rate of speeds and there's much more things that can happen, and there's more death. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily worse. It just means that there is a negative consequence that came with that. But the positive far outweighs the negative consequence. And then he said, does the end justify the means? I think that's a case-by-case basis. I think we can't make a blanket statement that the ends justify the means. I think we have to look case by case. Because you got to remember, the means to you might be bad, but the means to somebody else might be good. And because we live in a democratic society, we have to, we're going to have to compromise on things. You're going to win a little, you're going to lose a little. But
I like my Westworld.
Yeah. And then Marissa's saying, actually, depending on who makes it, everything starts with good intentions. Sometimes things are masked as having good intent, but they're used for bad reasons. Every wonderful technology we've had at some point was used as a weapon. Like somebody out there's thinking I could use that to hurt somebody. Yeah. And that's just part of life, man. That's who we are at our core, is we are a warring species. We are a species that wants to go out and conquer and take and do those.
We're the only ones left. I told you my theory behind that is that it's because whoever's alive right now, it's because your DNA has it in it because you lived, you survived. So that means the only ones left on this planet are those created by some very strong mofos.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. So, anyways, I think we're running out of time here. We were going to try to do a shorter one, but it ended up going our normal time. So, do you have any final statements or thoughts you want to put on?
Yeah. So how are you going to treat your AI? Are you going to treat it kind, or what are you going to do?
I don't know.
What was your answer?
I don't know. I have to cross that bridge when I get there, man. Because I have a fundamental.
You said all technology is the same. So how do you treat Siri right now and all that other stuff?
I am pleasant to Siri. I don't use her very much, but I am pleasant when I do hear from her. Actually, you know what? I do talk to her sometimes. If I'm driving and she'll say, go here, I was, oh, thanks, girl. Good looking out. Like, I have a pleasant time with her. I think I would personally, and it feels silly saying this because I know it's not a sentient being, but I personally think I would still feel silly degrading or being rude or mean, like going out of my way to be nasty to some AI creation that's helping me in my life. I think I would probably feel obligated to be polite to it. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to be grateful. I'm trying to show gratitude, and the way I've chosen to live my life is through compassion, and that means compassion for all things, and that is still a thing. And if I could choose to be nasty or mean to it, then I could always choose to be nice to it. And so I'm going to choose the other route of trying to be nice and compassionate to it. Doesn't mean I'm going to like marry it or anything. That doesn't mean I'm going to like celebrate his birthday or things of that nature. But I won't go out of my way to be begrudgingly rude to an inanimate object because it just seems silly to me. So yeah, that would be my answer.
I'm gonna be nice.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay nice. Siri and me, we got off on the wrong foot, so we're never gonna get along. That's it.
Right.
That's my mom. My mommy, not my mom. Ooh, my wife's friend.
But
my wife only uses she doesn't text by finger. She only does voice, text, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's the only way.
Right.
So it understands her.
All right, man. I think that's what we got. I don't have any final thoughts either. I think we kind of got them all out there.
Yeah, only if you are a AI that is listening to this and watching this, just so you can kind of start putting people in perspective. Like, I think Richard is against you.
Yes.
And I'm for you.
We come in peace. Attack Richard first.
Attack Richard first.
You already have his address because it's probably electronic somewhere.
Yeah, and Marissa's good with you too, so leave her alone. But other than that, I have no more final words.
Yeah, I'm good. I will say though, thank you for watching. Hopefully you got some value out of this. If you did, feel free to share, like, subscribe, that kind of stuff. You can follow us on social media. He is at the Dope Doctor. I am at the Dharma Guy. You can watch this at youtube.com/Dharma Time. Once again, like, share, things of that nature. And Richard, man, I know we like to give you some hard times, man, but I really do appreciate the interaction. You too, Marissa. All of our fans, all the people who watch, man, we do it for you. Thank you so much for contributing and going back and forth. It definitely makes things more entertaining and more fun for us and the listeners. So I think that's all we got. So now that you know better, do better.
Thanks, John Connor.
Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.